As I mentioned before, Ronald has experienced life from both sides of the investment business. He spent over 12 years as an investment banker with firms such as Panmure Gordon and Jefferies & Co. And also works as a CFO and then CEO of Pharmagene. He's now founder and CEO of Lucia Capital, a corporate finance advisory firm. And Ronald will be giving his views on top tips, 10 top tips for emerging companies and investors, particularly looking at the comparisons with the biotech industry.
Thank you. Looking at this, I'm really going to take it back over most of the last 20 years, the last 10 of which have probably been close to hideous. The previous 10 were actually glorious. And we've seen a mass of different areas. So I'm going to use the word biotech as it was probably back in the early 90s when it meant anything slightly medical. It wasn't just brewing in yeast, it was medtech devices, it was specialty pharma companies. Because that's actually an interesting group of companies to have a look at. And in good top of the pop style, we'll do it in reverse order of the top 10. It's a very statistically significant sample. This is my opinion. So we'll run it that way. So in at number 10, we'll ignore the rest of the top 100, but in at number 10, I think you've got to be realistic, first and foremost, about do you have a technology or do you have a company? There's lots and lots of companies being out there that have said, oh yeah, I'm going to be a wonderful company, I've got this great platform technology, it's going to transform the world, and then they go bust. Because actually they aren't able to take that technology on and deliver a meaningful business out of it at the end of it. So let's take a compare and contrast. I'll be nice and mean through this section. PPL, Dolly the Sheep, fabulous company, raised a stack of money, proved that the science worked, but weren't able to turn it into a real business with longevity to it. That business failed. Interestingly, I had put it on my list and I thought it's not biotech, so I can't talk about it, but given that Herman mentioned it, I will bring it back onto the list. Arm, perfect example of taking technology and turning it into a company with real legs to it. A company that's been around, what, 20 years now? Here was a great idea, and actually take something which is real technology and move it downstream so that it has an enduring route forwards, because technology doesn't make companies. Companies have long legs and are enduring on an ongoing business. So first is, what's your business? If it's just technology, get it licensed into the hands of somebody that can use it for its purpose. If it's a company, yeah, go ahead and do it. The next one comes on about know your product. Where is your product? And if you're a biotech company, sometimes the product is the company, because it's the company itself which will be sold. You grow it, you develop it, and you move it. A great friend of Martin's and I's, Ron Long, battered into me over the 4 or 5 years at Pharmagene before Martin had the pleasure of taking it on to the next stage, was the 5 Ps of marketing. Product, position, place, people, price. Get a real understanding of where you're going to take your product. How are you going to take it to market? Are you going to license it? Are you going to OEM it? Are you actually going to take it to market yourselves? Are you the brave one? And then I do the compare and contrast between British Biotech and Gyrus, given that I've extended biotech. British Biotech went out and were in the process of recruiting a sales force before they even had a product to sell. Gyrus, on the other hand, got their product into the market early on and started selling it to physicians who were using it in operating theatres. And then they went and bought more products. That's about building a business around it. Again, thinking about people who really understood that their product was the company, look at Pyramid. Pyramid took a vanishingly thin slice of technology and turned it into something really very valuable. They got into a strategic alliance with Genentech, Roche. They then sold their product, the company, to Roche, because Roche couldn't do without it. Biotech's greatest weakness is probably expressed in both its risk and its time. The amounts of money that we need to sink into early stage drug discovery possibly have changed in the new paradigm. This is frightening, but it's real. And as I'm out in the market every day, I see this. This is real. The risk capital is just not there. I'll come on to risk capital in a minute. Drilling for oil is probably an awful lot less risky than biotech at the moment. So great news for everybody out here. Which takes me on to the next one, which is about being lean and mean. We've got to build businesses, companies, something which is sustainable. And that means, and this is filthy language around this audience probably 10 years ago, revenue, profit, sustainability. You've got to avoid the fixed costs. Herman's points about cutting costs I totally echo. In restructuring businesses, it's really painful to do it, but you've got to avoid the fixed costs, and that's in things like your rent. It's also in terms of the people. It's dead easy to recruit people during the good times. It's shockingly horrid to get rid of them in the bad times. Running businesses, nobody likes taking heads out of businesses. It's painful and it costs real money. Every time you take people out and pay them their 1 month, 3 month, 12 months because the CEO hasn't been performing out, boy does that cost on the way through. Revenue generation, I think, does two things which are really important. First is it gives you income. It reduces the amount of capital that you need. It turned up on one of the questions earlier in terms of what are you trying to do in order to raise money, which was raise revenue for yourselves. It also does something else which is important. It tells you whether your customer, client, the buyer of your goods and services actually wants what you want. And being lean and mean is very important. Let's talk about risk capital, because I think it very much echoes the economics points. I love the thought early on about the MBA school is that it's a fungible resource. Actually, I have to say I've never agreed with that. Capital is dreadfully difficult to get hold of. All of the CEOs in the audience who spent far too long doing roadshows, raise a hand, please. Yeah, it's dreadful. It's really difficult work. And one of our difficulties here is that the risk capital appetite in the United Kingdom is fundamentally different to the US. In the US, there are some great biotech greats. Amgen, Genzyme, Genentech. Gilead used to be this pipsqueak little company, and now it's a global pharma business. These businesses just didn't exist. So where are our great companies? They're Celtech, Kairos Science, Powderjet, and Gyrus, who've all been bought. They've never been allowed to reach that point of maturity on their own. We've got the 3 big pharma companies, but actually those ones aren't there. So our hopes are with probably some of the following: Prostracan, Antisoma, BTG, Vectura, homegrown businesses. They're now at that point where they're starting to move on to the next stage. We're in a particularly horrible environment. We used to think that there was such a thing as a rescue rights issue. I would suggest that the folks at Ardana, York, Meldex and MMI don't agree that rescue rights issues exist anymore. Capital is just a horribly tight commodity to be able to get hold of. The point about the government incentives I find very interesting, because government incentives, and especially go back to the great 90s when the Germans decided that they would stimulate their biotech economy, what they actually created was a whole bunch of rubbish companies. Rather than creating, I buy Herman's point entirely, that the Cambridge hub is unique. It's a fabulous place to be because all of the right things are here and the human capital is around to be able to make it work. But I think that government funding it's got to be deployed well. The question, how do we deploy that capital is important. So risk capital's not there. I think the other reason that risk capital isn't there is because in the UK we have a very nasty, almost pernicious sense that being successful is a bad thing. Fat cats, bankers, bonuses, taxing the rich. There is a real culture of punishing success in this country. When we're into marginal tax rates at 60%, it tells us something about what the government really wants people to do. Go somewhere else. Go somewhere where you don't have to pay 60% of your income, because guess what? You worked damned hard.